Get a stick, get a stick, get a stick. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Last Cast Adventures. As always, I am your host, Daniel, and in this episode we're going after grass carp on fly. Now I know what some of you are thinking, how do you catch a grass carp on fly? Well, I still haven't quite figured it out. I've managed to catch 2 out of like 40 to 50 I've actually thrown to. They're very finicky, and at least where I'm at, they're incredibly spooky. So if you get lucky enough to find some that aren't, little insect patterns or possibly even little like algae patterns tend to work out pretty well. I use a little hopper, which I'll show later on in the video here, and it seems to work. They actually are willing to come up to the surface to bite it, so that's pretty cool because grass carp on fly on the surface is just like, whoa. So I'm no expert here, I'm still learning, but I figured I'd make a video and show some of you guys that it is possible. Now, some people will use pellet patterns and such, like little deer hair foam looking things, just because, you know, people throw that sometimes to grass carp and then they'll eat it. That's one way to do it. Me personally, I'd prefer to get them on something else that doesn't look like food. So stick around, hope you guys enjoy, and hit that subscribe button when you think about it. Now, when you are going to find grass carp, the first thing you want to do is make sure you're even in the right spot. So what happened here was the wind blew all this material and soot onto the surface, and sure enough, those were carp up there mouthing on it and feeding for algae. So that's definitely a big part, is at least making sure that they're there before you even bother going. If you look closely to where my line lands, you can actually see them come to the surface and bite it. Now, 1 out of those 4 bites I actually felt, and in this video I found out what happened. I was using a little hopper pattern, and carp would come up to the surface and he would go to bite it, but then they're not really an aggressive fish. I mean, they eat algae all the time. So instead of like really sucking it in, it just kind of went around his mouth. You know, the water that he came up with just kind of messed it up, and so it actually would roll out of his mouth before he'd close it. That, and he was facing me. So only one of those times I actually felt the fish on the end, because the other times he never actually had it in his mouth. Very frustrating, and just obviously you could tell I was frustrated because I kept trying and kept having problems. time to go to work. Yes! That is awesome. Look at you. Beautiful. So I was using 8 to 10 pound tippet on my 6-weight fly rod here, and what really helped is when he came up to bite the green hopper, he was facing away from me, so by the time I set the hook, it didn't pop out of his mouth like it had before with others. I'm sure some of you noticed that there is a lot of fish busting in front of me, and you probably also noticed the fish feeder right above the boat. Well, this guy who lives on the lake decided some time ago to put in a fish feeder, and it goes off twice a day. What had happened was, as I was walking by to look for some bass, and didn't see where the bass were at because they had been bedding there before, and next thing I know, this starts going off. Well, I know that the carp get attracted to it, as well as shiners and bluegill, definitely turtles, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's some crappie and catfish down there as well. But I didn't quite, just want to use a pellet pattern like I had spoken about earlier, or a bread pattern, so I was trying the Jones tantalizer at first, and hoping I could just kind of bring that in front of one, and maybe he'd see it and go for it. Well, that didn't really work, so I kind of had to switch it around. I mean, how could you not just feel like a terrible fisherman when you have all these fish going off and nothing's biting? I mean, granted, they're hitting little tiny little things, but it was frustrating. So I had to switch. I switched to an insect pattern that would stay near the surface. I figured it might be able to trick one. Well, those ones are going to be gone. Oh, there we go. Come on, girl, that's all you got. There we go. That's a big girl. Yeah, that's a big girl. There we go. One more run. Yeah, there she is. Ooh, don't like that feeling. Probably just her tail, isn't it? She don't want it.
actually asked a guy who was walking by to take some pictures of me with the fish, but he didn't take any good ones, so unfortunately I don't really have any good pictures of me with this fish.
Thanks for watching this episode of Last Cast Adventures. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. If you could just do me a favor and go hit that subscribe button, and if you're really feeling up to it, just hit that like button. Leave any comments if you'd like to. I'm going to be posting as many videos as I can, whenever I get anything cool, try to put it out there. And I just hope you guys enjoy and appreciate the support.